bonjour. Mon nom est David Loutier, je suis directeur régional au groupe Investors dans la région de Québec.
Bonjour, mon nom est Nicolas Shields, aussi directeur régional avec le groupe Investors à Montréal.
Fernand Loisel, directeur régional au groupe Investors, également un bureau de Montréal.
Donc, bonjour Messieurs Labranche. Ça fait plaisir d'être ici avec vous aujourd'hui pour discuter du projet dont nous avions parlé il y a quelques temps. Au cours des derniers temps, mes collègues Lambert, Alexandre et moi-même, Ariane, avons uni nos forces afin de vous présenter la meilleure recommandation possible en prenant en compte toutes les contraintes qui nous ont été présentées ainsi que la situation actuelle de votre compagnie. Donc, sans plus tarder, je vais vous présenter l'agenda pour aujourd'hui. On va poursuivre le reste de la présentation en anglais. Toutefois, si vous avez des questions dans l'une ou l'autre des deux langues, n'hésitez pas. So you see here that we will first start by a situation overview, pursue with the opportunity and decision process that are here for you today, then move on to the evaluation of the project, its implementation, and finally, the other considerations that are necessary for you to know about before you launch the project. So here, we have an executive summary giving you a highlight of what we are proposing to you today. So really, three key points we had in mind were first, the opportunity for you to grow your sales in Quebec, second, a delayed expansion to the United States, and third, attractive returns on your investment, something that is probably the most interesting to you in this case. So you see here in the first point, you have the opportunity to increase capacity of your production facility to grow your market share in the market of Quebec, when you currently only own 6%. This market is dominated by 5 or 6 big players that are very differentiated from you because they sell to larger retailers and therefore have a brand equity that is more associated with large and low-cost retailers. We think it's important for you to maintain your brand as you will remain a family business focused on quality and good relationships with their customers. The second point, a delayed expansion to the United States. Given the important investments that are required for you the next few years, we recommend that you delay this expansion for 2 years. So here, you see that the current margins do not allow immediate expansion because of the important capital expenditures. And we also laid down a plan for you to launch an e-commerce platform, something that in our opinion will definitely improve your sales revenue and profit margins. And third point, here we're presenting you today an investment opportunity with a return of 22.9%, a payback period of a little less than 4 years, and finally an opportunity for Mr. Marco Labranche to get his skin in the game and invest $25,000 of his own savings to start the transition for his father's retirement, and the rest of the funding will come from the local Center of Development from CTSN. So here, quick summary, the delayed expansion to the United States will ensure the success of the project over the years to come. So moving on to the market overview, we want to give you an idea of the key factors we considered when building the plan. We know how important your business is to you, and we wanted to make sure we had a good understanding of what was currently happening before moving to the recommendation. So here, we have a $17 million market in Quebec, and pet stores are responsible for 85% of your sales, with 15% coming from bird breeders. The second key point to consider is that you're operating in a very, very specialized market. You need to make sure that you differentiate yourself from other competitors to maintain and grow your market share. And finally, we want to mention that discount stores have also entered this market, but as I mentioned earlier, we want to differentiate ourselves from the brands that are already in those large retail stores. Now, the United States market, the one we're looking to penetrate in the next 2 years, in the 2 years, is defined by 3 key points. First, the NAFTA agreement eliminates customs tariffs and duties, something that makes this market more attractive than others around the globe. Second point, similar regulations in terms of labeling and quality facilitates the process a lot for exports. And third point, the decline of Canadian dollars plays to your advantage.
Thank you so much. All right, so just a quick overview of your company. Well, you took you took over the company in 1992. As my colleague explained, you're highly specialized. You're selling pure seeds, mixed seeds, cat litters, and other specialized products. Only focus on Quebec, the Quebec market as of now. You have only 5 employees. 2 of them are part-time employees. Here's a graph of your revenues over the last 4 years. We can see that revenues have been decreasing over the last 2 years. Also, profit margins only around 1%, only 0.6% in the last year. This is very important to keep in mind because it's going to affect our whole recommendation. You want to go sell your product in the United States. That means you have to go to a distributor and incur transportation costs. These are all things that will reduce your margins going forward. And this is why we do not think right now you're in a position to do exactly that. Also a final point, you have a debt ratio of around 50%. This is extremely high, and this is also going to affect our decision in terms of how much capital can we get to invest in that new project. So let me draw your attention to the graph on the left. This is what was proposed to us, the investment schedule that you were planning on doing. As you can see, well, we do not believe this is the right way to go forward. As I mentioned, this is a cost of investment of $100,000 right now in your first year, and we do not believe you're ready to incur that expense right now in your first year, as I've shown the financial picture before. We think a better way to go forward would be to have the same investment in the first year regarding the improvement of your facilities. Also, we would want to we double the investment in your website because currently you don't even have a website, and we believe you should have not only a website but an e-commerce platform through which you could sell your products to everywhere, so also to the United States. And this new platform would allow you not to go to a distributor, but direct for the sales and promotion. You could directly sell through your platform online. And this is why it would require a larger investment. Sorry about that. Regarding the expansion to the United States, we've deferred that, as you can see, 2 years. And also this allows us to use the cash flows in the first year to fund this expansion instead of using your Marco's money or using more debt. As we've seen, you're pretty already indebted. So, before taking any decision, we've looked at what really matters to you, Mr. Labranche, and these are the 3 things we came up with. You want to increase your sales, you want to ensure the financial health of your business, and you want to also ensure the sustainability of your business because you want to pass it on to your son, Marco. So these are all the options that we've considered. And as of right now, we think the best thing to do, as my colleague explained before, is to invest in that new facility to increase your capacity, and also to focus on the Quebec market for the years to come. You only have 6% in that market, and there are only 5 to 6 other players. So we think there's a lot of room to grow there, and you're not entirely ready to go to the States as of now with a profit margin of 0.6%. So really focus on that market, increase your margins, and then when the e-commerce platform is up and running and is doing good, then you'll be ready to attack a new market. And just to clarify one point, we're not saying the expansion to the United States is not a viable option. It's just that currently, as of today, we do not think you're in a financial position that allows you to expand to the US. I'll now pass it on to Lambert, who will go over the valuation part.
Okay. Thank you, Alex. All right, great. So if we look at the assumptions, so we built a discounted cash flow analysis for this potential project. And so if we look at the key assumptions that we made for the income statement, we can see that local sales are growing at 10% per year, while the export will be growing at 5%. And then we took the cost of goods sales as a proportionate revenue, as a proportion of revenue, as we expect realistically the cost of goods sold to stay at a constant rate of the revenue. Now, if we look at the operating expense, they are around 19 to 21% historically. However, going forward, we think it would be more conservative to keep it at 22%, on top of the fact that you will have to increase the size of your facilities. Now, operating tax rate, we kept it constant at the average between the 17 and 13%, so at 15 to 14% per year. Now, if we look at the local price per bag and the export price per bag, those are for the implied calculations as to what is the number of bags that we could potentially sell to make sure that our project remains feasible within our current facilities. Thank you. Okay, now if we look at the income statement, we can see that from the assumption, the revenue is growing at the top. And, you know, considering the fact that we have a $31 price per bag for locally, and we want to penetrate the market in the United States through a cost leadership strategy, we're going to price our bag at $27 instead of $31. And so this gives us the implied number of bags that we will sell. And considering the fact that we calculated that our current facility only enables us to produce 47,000 bags, we think that since we will go over that capacity, we increase the operating expense as a proportion of revenue to remain realistic. Now, cost of goods sold, as we can see, they also increase over time in line with our assumption all the way to net profit, which increases over time. Now, if we look at the key balance sheet assumption, the main thing that we look for is the change in net working capital that would help us calculate our potential return on investments. And so we can see that one of the key assumptions that we made is that we kept the change in inventory as a proportion of revenue constant over time, because we assumed that the company was producing on demand. And so as a result, that change in inventory would stay constant. Now, if we look at account receivable as a proportion of revenue, we keep it constant. Note receivable, account payable, and note payable in a similar fashion, on keeping it on a historical average. Okay, now if we look at our free cash flow calculation, so as we talked about, so we took the net operating profit after tax, and then we accounted for the change in working capital, and then we subtracted the capital expenditure, which we already discussed, and that gave us a free cash flow over the next 5 years. And so something that's very interesting is that you can see that your free cash flow will only be negative in the project's first year of operation, which reduces to a certain proportion the potential risk that you're taking, and that the project breaks even after about 3.5 years within the project. And so you can expect an internal rate of return. So what is your rate of return annualized of the project of 21%? And we also expect a money on money multiple of 2 times, which is essentially how many times are you going to make the money that you invest in this project. So you will make 2 times your money, and you can expect about a 23% annualized rate of return. And also something to keep in mind is that this is only for the first 5 years of the project, and the project could have repercussion on your business that expands well beyond that 5 years. Great, so I'll now pass it on to my colleagues for the implementation.
Okay, perfect, thank you. So now that we've drawn a clear plan of exactly how we want to implement the project, we need to have steps in order to reach a successful completion. So here you see the first thing to do that right after this meeting is to present this document to the local center of development to obtain the interest-free loan that was proposed to us, and then obtain all permits necessary for the new facility. Following that, we will be able to develop expansion and implement the new equipment that is needed for you to increase capacity. The second point to make sure that this project reaches completion is to make sure that we start right away to implement the e-commerce strategy. It's very important that we start looking at the website, how to build it, how to implement it, and we do recommend that we work with IT specialists for that mandate. Key points to keep in mind: we need to make sure that the website is bilingual because we want to reach both markets. We want to make sure that our e-commerce platform is up and running and that customers can start sending their orders online. Third point to consider, we want to start hiring and training new employees right away. We are increasing capacity, we are planning Mr. and Mrs. Lebranche's retirement, and it's very important for us that we find employees that are a good fit for the small family business and that can ensure the long-term sustainability of the business. It's something that we should start earlier than later. The fourth point, as we see it happening in the second year of the project, here is the online advertising, the trade shows, and the visits to the United States. Now that the production facility will be installed and that the website will be up and running, it is now time to start using online advertising and direct selling promotion to now reach those sales targets that we've discussed earlier. And the last point, and really something that should be happening throughout the whole project, is something we discussed because we want to keep in mind that we are also planning for the transition from Mr. Benoit Labranche to his son. It's the importance of coaching and monitoring. It's very important for us that we think long-term and we think about what will be happening in the next few years, and coaching is something that is crucial in this case.
Sure. So I'll just go quickly over the e-commerce platform that we're proposing. Right now, as I mentioned earlier, your company doesn't own any website. As we included our model, we'll be doubling the initial website investment to really build a e-commerce platform through which you'll be able to sell your product anywhere. We want to launch a Google AdWords campaign as soon as your website is ready to really be able to target the pet stores online to which you want to sell your product. And finally, as I mentioned earlier, the platform reduces your need to use a distributor, which will negatively affect your margins, as you may well know. So really your e-commerce platform will drive revenue growth in the future and will allow you to sell your product essentially anywhere in North America. So all right, I just want to finish with a few risks and mitigants that are related to our strategy. First of all, there are many macroeconomic risks that needs to be considered. First of all, foreign exchange risk. If you're going to sell your product in the US, this is important, and this could be mitigated with, of course, any financial instruments like foreign exchange swaps, for instance. If really your sales increase at an important level and you start having the need to really edge your position in the U.S. market. Also, we know that the NAFTA is currently a bit under threat with the current results of the election in the United States. However, because right now your majority of your sales are in Quebec, we do not see this as an issue because, well, this is a low cap, like the investment that you'll have to make in the US is fairly low and you can always pull back at any moment, so this is not a substantial risk. And finally, oil prices, because you'll be transporting your products in the US, this is an important risk, but again, with the recent developments with the OPEC, we do not believe, we believe oil prices are expected to stay fairly low for the next few years, so we do not see this as a big risk. In line with this, the transportation costs, eliminating your margins. We know your margins are fairly low right now, and this is an important risk because these transportation costs can be fairly high. But again, we expect oil prices to remain fairly stable in the next few years. So this mitigate that risk. And finally, the transition to your son, Marco Lebranche. We believe, as my colleague explained, by coaching him and extending the training period to more than 1 year, this is the best way to go to assure a successful succession of your business. Yeah, so if there are 3 things you can take away from this presentation, first of all, we really believe there's opportunity for your family business to keep growing your sales in Quebec. There's a lot of space in that market, and once really your e-commerce platform is up and running and you've established yourself in the market and your margins are back at their initial level, well, we believe at that time you'll be able to expand your sales to the US and at the same time to keep your margins high because you'll be selling through your platforms instead of using a distributor for the sales and promotion of your products. And finally, with all that, what really matters to you, an IRR of around 23%, and you'll be paying back your investment in only a bit less than 4 years, which is fairly good. And Marco will be able to get a first position in your company by investing $25,000. So we thank you very much, and we're open to any questions in French or English, as you prefer.
I want to hear a little more about that, your marketing strategies. Because you're suggesting to invest in our website, in an e-commerce platform, but that's a really passive way to market our products. So, and if we want to expand to the US in 2 years, I think we need maybe more sales force to expand and to grow our market in Quebec. So I want to hear a little more about your strategies because it seems a little passive to me to grow our market.
Sure, this is a really good question because the e-commerce platform won't do it itself. You need to market your product online, but this was all included because we took the expenses, marketing expenses as a percentage of revenues. As revenue grows, your marketing expense grows as well in the model that we've shown, and this includes all the marketing that we're doing online with Google and through other websites online. So it's a really good question. It's really important. And at that point in year 2, you'll really need, we can still be there to help you to really, we'll need to build a whole strategy on how to attack this market, the US market, effectively.
With the e-commerce business, do you know what the cost of acquiring a client would be online?
Well, as my colleague Alexandre just mentioned, we would like to pursue strategy using Google AdWords first. We are operating in a very niche market, and this specific marketing strategy allows us to target our clients based by their Google searches. So to us, it would be a way to reach out to our new client. I would just like to bring back here our capital expenditure schedule. Once we launch our strategy to tackle the US market, we will also add direct selling visits from Mr. and Mrs. Labonche to the United States and visits to trade shows as well to spread the word about our business in highly specialized trade shows as well. So to us, it's a very good way to
Because it's highly, specific to, because it's a very specific market, you think the cost of acquiring client online would be cheaper? Less?
We think that by targeting our clients very specifically through AdWords, but also trade shows where we find people that are all very interested in the same subject matter in the same building on the same day. It is for us a very cost-effective way to target all those people.
And if I could just add on to that, it's also in line with our strategy to wait because the cost to acquire a new customer right now in Quebec is fairly low. With Google AdWords, it can be 10 cents, it could be $100. We don't know exactly, but it's fairly low. Whereas if we want to acquire a new customer in the US, well, we have to get to the US. These are all the trade shows. They cost a huge amount of money, and at that point, the cost to acquire new customers in the US is fairly high compared to the costs in Quebec. And right now, there's room in Quebec. There are thousands of customers we can still acquire in Quebec at a low cost. So this is also in line with our strategy to wait.
Yes, you put a really big emphasis on the online strategy, but if we are looking for the other stats you show us, main of the customer buy their food for their stuff by the pet shops. So it's not est-ce que c'est pas un peu contradictoire?
The thing is, on vend directement aux pet stores.
All right.
Ouais, fait que nous, on target ces pet stores-là, et les pet stores, eux autres, ils vont acheter plus en ligne. Ouais, c'est du business to business. Eux autres vont aller en ligne, acheter notre produit, et ensuite, ils vont le revendre dans leur pet stores.
Tu restes dans le B2B.
Ouais, exact.
Le B2C.
Exact.
You said that we had a really high debt ratio, 49% or something, and you suggest that we finance 75% of this project. Is that Did I get that right?
In fact, well, we're suggesting not, because with that ratio and with the initial investment of $100,000 that was proposed for next year, as soon as next year, we don't have the cash on hand or enough debt to finance that project, so we would have to take even more debt and increase that debt ratio, and that becomes dangerous. And this is why we believe by extending that period, that CapEx schedule, we'll be able to self-fund that project. As you saw, we become cash flow positive as soon as year 2, and that way we can use that money to fund the expansion in the US instead of taking even more debt or using all of your son's money. We know he was ready to invest $100,000, but we think this is just way too risky. We're better to wait and self-fund the project, and this also reduces our risk.
That's it.